years old. I lived in a house that had bars in front, and I used those bars to climb up on the roof. Of course, when nobody was watching, except maybe my little sister. But one day I was up on the roof, and my mother came out and she saw me. And she goes, Muchachita, bájate de ahí. Get down from there. What are you doing? Why? Because you're a girl. And that was the reason they gave me for everything that I could not do, because I was a girl. I was not allowed to play with boys. I was not allowed to even look at boys in my all-girls school when they would come and pick up their sisters. So you can imagine when my parents decided to move and they put me and my sister in a co-ed school. Oh boy, those boys were a real mystery to me. But then at the end of the year, we were going to have awards. I had never had awards, so I was really excited. I even told my parents, you know what? I think I'm going to get the math award. So the day comes, and we're waiting there for everybody to get their awards. They're calling out names, the award for the best science project, the award for Spanish, the award for math. And I'm sitting there on the edge of my seat. I'm waiting to hear my name. I'm so excited. And when they call out the name, it wasn't my name. It wasn't me. It was some boy in my class. I'm going to call him Joe. So I look at Joe, walk up to the stage, take his award, turn around, smile at everybody. And I was so mad. I told my parents when we got home, it's not fair. My mom, well, honey, maybe you'll get it next year. I don't want it next year. I want it this year. And my dad, don't feel bad. You know, girls are not supposed to be smarter than boys. I could not wrap my head around that. You mean to tell me that I have to give up my award so that some boy doesn't feel bad because there's a girl who's smarter than he is? I suppose back then, girls just had to look pretty and be dumb. But I was not pretty, and I definitely was not dumb. But after that, we went back to the city where we had been before. Our parents did not put us back in the all-girls school. They put us in the co-ed school again. And that's where I was supposed to finish high school. And after high school, I wanted to go to college. But the group that I started to hang out with, they were not too interested in school. They were more interested in cutting class, going to the beach, going to the river. And I would go out with them, but I was really scared. I was afraid that we'd get caught and get kicked out of school. Well, I did get kicked out of school, but not because I was cutting class. It was because I was pregnant. And I was terrified. I could not understand what was happening. Everything was upside down. I had to leave school, but the boy, another Joe, he got to stay. Now, do you think I was going to let that hold me back? My mother's sister helped me figure out how to get my high school equivalency diploma. And then I figured out how to apply to the university and get accepted. But I didn't tell anybody until the fall semester started because I didn't want anybody telling me, oh, no, you can't go to school. You're married now and you have a baby. I was 17 when I got married and had my baby. I was 18 when I got divorced. Later, I got married again, got divorced again, married, divorced. And in the end, I figured I'd be better off just getting a dog. Believe me, I did not call him Joe. The fact is that there were no straight lines in my life. My life was very messy, very unpredictable. And I really envied those girls that had like their 5-year plans, their 10-year plans. And for me, the only constant thing was being confused, doing all the wrong things, being by myself, and having to work. So even though I did get my BA, got a BA in Spanish literature, I was not able to continue and get my master's and my PhD. So one day I was looking at the newspaper and I saw an ad. It said, looking for people with degrees in foreign languages. I said, I have a degree in foreign languages. And they were going to pay $12 an hour. That was more than twice what I was making at the time. So I called, made an appointment, went for an interview, and they said, yes, we're going to train you. That was going to be 3 weeks of training with no pay. But in the end, I became an interpreter. And it was one of the best things that could have happened to me because I love being an interpreter. It's a profession in which you're learning all the time. I became a thoroughly certified interpreter, and I even became an expert in my field. When I became federally certified, I started to make a whole lot more money, which allowed me to take a break at one point and go back to school and get my master's. But then after that, I had to wait another 25 years before I could even think about getting my PhD. What do you think about when you think about retiring? Do you think, oh, when I retire, I'm going to travel the world? Or when I retire, I'm going to play golf every day? Or I'm going to go fishing every day? Well, for me, it was when I retire, I want to go back to school. The day after I retired, I moved to Texas to be with my daughter. She had just had her first baby. And that's where I wanted to be. But I figured, as long as I'm here, might as well find out what programs are out there at the local universities. And there was a program at the University of Texas that I liked. I found it interesting, so I sent in my application. And a few weeks later, some Joe sent me a letter saying, we regret to inform you, strike one. But do you think I let that hold me back? No, sir. I found a research collaborative and I joined them. And out of that research collaborative, I was able to go to Valencia, Spain to present my research. And then it got published in a peer-reviewed law journal. And then came COVID. You know, one of the good things that came with COVID that very few people think about, universities started to offer all kinds of online degrees because people couldn't go to the classroom. They were offering all these advanced degrees online. And I thought, wow, this is wonderful. I started to look. Most of them were like in education. I wasn't interested in that. Others required like a summer residency. I didn't want to do that. And I found one that I really liked. I sent in my application. I waited. And a few weeks later, I got this email inform you. Strike two. Now, was I going to let that hold me back? No. The thing is, I was talking to a friend and I was telling her how hard it was. I thought it was going to be easier to find a degree program and start studying. She said, have you heard about this law degree for non-lawyers? I thought, I have not. Let me look into it. And I did, and I loved it. And it was not a PhD program. It was a master's, but I was so eager to get back in school. I said, what do I have to lose? I've been rejected twice already. The application was free. What the heck? I sent in my application, and lo and behold, I got admitted. It was a conditional admission, but I didn't care. I was admitted. Now I had to think, okay, how am I going to pay for this? Let's see. I'm a non-traditional student. I'm a woman. I'm Hispanic. I'm Puerto Rican. There has to be something out there, some financial assistance or some program for someone like me, right? Wrong. There was nothing. I couldn't find anything for someone like me. Would you believe that there are hardly any statistics about women over 60 going back to graduate school? Yeah, I'm sure you believe it. Because we're invisible. We're not statistically significant. In fact, most of the statistics show all women going back to school at a later age as one group, women over 40. Women over 40. What happened to 50, 60, 70? Well, no wonder there's no financial aid for us. But I had already committed to the program. I was going to go through with it, and I did. And on commencement day, I went to graduation, and I thought for sure I am going to be the oldest student here. Well, I wasn't. There was one other student who was older than me and was a woman. So with my degree, I went back to Clemson, and I told the program director, I have a master's degree in legal studies now with a 4-point average. You can see that I'm very serious about my studies. Will you reconsider my application? And the director said, well, you're going to have to resubmit everything again. I said, okay, I will resubmit everything again. And a few weeks later, I get the answer. You have been admitted. I was in. So now I am a PhD student at Clemson in the Rhetorics, Communication, and Information Design program. I turned 70 last November. I will probably be 75, 76 by the time I graduate, but I don't care. I am in my happy place. And sometimes when I tell my fellow students how old I am, you should see their faces. They go like, what? But then I see their smiles, and I see like this special glow that starts to come out because I think they're realizing there are other possibilities in life. Life doesn't end at 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. There's new horizons that they hadn't even thought about before. And some of them tell me that I have inspired them, for which I'm glad, even though I never set out to inspire anybody, except maybe be a good role model for my grandkids. But with my story, I do hope that I have inspired you not to let anybody or anything hold you back, not even yourselves. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. It doesn't matter how much time goes by. It doesn't matter how many obstacles you encounter. It's going to be worth it. Just don't let anybody hold you back, ever. Gracias.